Good morning. And what I would like to talk about this morning um, is basically us. And I want to start with uh, um, the sutta, which many of you have heard these lines in some form or another. And the sutta says that Ananda, who was really, I think a nice way to say it is, was the Buddha's best friend, uh, often described in many other ways, but Ananda was the Buddha's best friend. Um, and so this story starts out Ananda went to see the Buddha and on arrival sat with him. As he was sitting there, Ananda said to the Buddha, "This is half of the spiritual life: good friendship, good companionship, good camaraderie." "Oh, don't say that, Ananda, don't say that," the Buddha said. "Good friendship, good companionship, good camaraderie is actually the whole of the spiritual life." Well, that's a big deal. That's really a big deal. I mean, here's the Buddha who's teaching decade after decade on dozens, hundreds of different topics, maybe thousands, um, training people on how to use the spiritual life to awaken, to see clearly. And the Buddha says the whole of the spiritual life is who you spend your time with. That's pretty incredible. Who you spend your time with is the spiritual life. That's what the Buddha is saying. So what is it that is going on, or what's the wisdom behind the that teaching that the whole spiritual life is who you spend your time with? And what's behind that is the nature of what we normally call self. That we think of the self, me, as separate from other. There's me, and then there's the rest of the world. Turns out that's not true. It turns out that me is actually very complex, a very complex series of all sorts of things that are aggregated together. Um, there are trillions of cells in our bodies. Trillions. And some of them talk to each other independent of anything we have in mind. My favorite one in the last year was reading this article about how the mitochondria that live in all our cells um, have conversations with the bacteria that lives in our digestive system. They send little packets of protein back and forth to let each other know what's needed, what's going on. It's beyond extraordinary. It is beyond extraordinary. And we forget that every element of our body, every single part of our body, um, comes from what has been eaten. First, what was eaten by whoever was carrying you inside her, and then by what you eat. Every cell in your body, the nutriment for creating that cell came from eating. And what did you eat? Well, basically other living beings for the most part, which is kind of spooky. But you are made up, physically made up of parts of other living beings, a vast, vast amount of other living beings. So besides nutrition, the other thing that has sustained our sense of separateness is breathing. And we breathe in and make this thing that we think of as external, this atmosphere that we breathe in, and it becomes part of us. And the complexity by which it becomes part of us is not something we think about, meaning that we don't control it, we don't decide, we don't choose the gulp of air, we don't move our heads and go over there and over here. We just take in whatever we take in. We're not controlling much. In fact, we're hardly controlling anything at all because the seat of control isn't really separate. It depends on what it is that we're in contact with. So we know that when we eat food that's not nutritious, we don't do so well. If we continually eat food that's not nutritious, we do very, very poorly. If we breathe in the part of the atmosphere that's full of pollutants, if we do that for a little while, we don't feel well. If we do that consistently, we get very ill. The people we spend our time with are like this. If we spend our time with people who are not nutritious, we don't feel well. If we spend most of our time with people who are not nutritious, we get sick. We have dis-ease. In order to stay awake, in order to establish a center within ourselves of kindness and care and respect and love, we need proper nutrition in the form of friendship, of good companionship, of good camaraderie. We need to be spending our time with people who support our most wholesome actions. Absolutely the holy life. So in another sutta, I grabbed up a little bit, it says this, and I think this is also Ananda talking, but I'm not certain. I have heard that on one occasion, the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi in the Jeddas Grove, and he said to the monks, "Monks, should someone ask you..." Oops. Hang on. Okay. "Monks, should someone ask you, what friend are the prerequisites for the development of the wings to awakening? What are the prerequisites for the development of the wings to awakening? And here is what you should answer. There is the case where a monk has admirable friends, admirable companions, admirable comrades. This is the first prerequisite for the development of the wings of awakening. For when a monk has admirable friends, admirable companions, admirable comrades, it is to be expected that she will get to hear at will, easily, and without difficulty, talk that is truly sobering and conducive to the opening of awareness. For example, talk on contentment, on letting go, on non-entanglement, on persistence, on virtue, on concentration, on discernment, on release, and on the knowledge of vision and release. Now read that last sentence again. When we have admirable friends, admirable companions, admirable comrades, it is to be expected that we will get to hear at will, easily and without difficulty, talk that is truly sobering and conducive to the opening of awareness. For example, talk on contentment, on letting go, on non-entanglement, on persistence, on virtue, on concentration, on discernment, on release, and on the knowledge and vision of release. It's interesting because it not only puts the responsibility on us to seek friends that that would be in this very way admirable, but even more so, it puts on us the obligation to be that kind of a friend. When you are being with your friends, are you gossiping? Are you saying, harmful things, expressing anger and hatred? And like that, the first statement in what you get to hear is talk that is truly sobering. Truly sobering. How opposite that is often from what we hear from our friends. Often what we hear from our friends is talk that is entertaining, maybe charming even. What would be talk that is truly sobering? Well, we do live in a difficult world, don't we? We do have to put in a tremendous amount of work to stay balanced and centered and at ease in a world that is truly difficult. That is sobering. It's pretty easy for me to wish to have moments when I'm not aware of all of this. maybe long moments, right? A whole movie's worth of moments when I'm not aware that, you know, that many people I know personally, many people they know, and the people those people know, on outward through the whole world, many of them are going through some form of difficulty. It's quite sobering for me to know this and to hold them in my heart. Not easy. So, yeah, talk to me of things that are light and silly, and I don't have to think about that. But the Buddha is saying that if your friends are of a certain type, they will join you in talk that is truly sobering. Sobering. What's the opposite of sober? Drunk, inebriated, you know, disconnected. Sober means that you're paying attention to what's truly occurring. Yeah, I want to put in a little plug for joy at this moment. That sobering does not preclude joy because everything is extraordinary. Everything about our moment to moment existence is incomprehensibly complex and beautiful. The world is difficult. The world is difficult, I think, more than anything else, because all of our nutrition comes from eating living beings. And other living beings, all their nutrition comes from eating living beings. It's pretty rough. It's a tough world to choose to live on. Wouldn't it be better to live, live on just, magic? You know, direct energy from the universe is our source of nutrition, and it's always wholesome. No, that's where I want to be, but that's not where I am. It's not where I am. You know, where I am physically, I get to watch the hawks at this time of year are very excited because there are tons of nests with baby birds in them. Yummy. What a snack. It's like, I mean, you really get that they're very excited. Their activity flying in and out of the forest. And sometimes coming out literally with a baby in their beak or their claws. Ouch. That's sobering. You know, this is where we are. And the complexity and the beauty, you know, somehow or another it all works. At times when the balance is really wonderful, um, birds produce more than enough babies to feed all the people, all those conscious beings that find baby birds as a wonderful source, or even older birds. Birds are a great source of nutrition to those that eat birds. Oh, I eat birds. I am someone who eats birds, right? I don't get to have a superior sense, you know. My sister, who I share this land with, has a big garden, and she's in her like fourth month of obsessing around the garden. Everything is planted, or almost everything, and things are growing, and this and that. And And her excitement is manifest as I'm visiting her in the garden. She says, "Oh, here, have some of this bok choy." And she tears some of the outer leaves off the bok choy to give me some food for me to make for lunch. And I'm sitting there watching and going, ouch, 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 each time she tears the leaf off. You know, that bok choy is alive. You know, I don't know exactly what form its thinking takes, its awareness takes. But, tearing off the outer leaves of the bok choy is not something the bok choy was like wanting. It's a harsh world. And the Buddha says, what are the prerequisites to developing awakening? What's the prerequisite? And the prerequisite is having uh, the right people to spend your time with. People who can handle talk that is truly sobering. And conducive to the opening of awareness. Not getting lost in entanglement. Being content that the complexity of the world is beyond knowing and is delightful, even in its harshness. The Buddha is suggesting that that we place ourselves somewhere where we will get to hear at will, easily and without difficulty. That's what the Buddha says. To be somewhere where you will hear at will, easily and without difficulty, talk that is truly sobering and conducive to the opening of awareness. Talk on contentment, on letting go, on non-entanglement, on persistence, on virtue, on concentration, on discernment, on release, and on the knowledge and vision of release. So then another sutta, the Buddha says, how does one cultivate the heart's release? By loving kindness. One cultivates the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, accompanied by loving kindness. And similarly, each of the enlightenment factors of investigation, energy, joy, calm, concentration, equanimity. When accompanied by loving kindness, which is based on detachment, dispassion, leading to the maturity of surrender, I declare that the heart's release by loving kindness has the beautiful for its excellence. One phrase that I've really come to use in my own practice, related to loving kindness, to metta, to love, is the phrase befriending. Befriending. So we're talking about friendship. We're talking about being with people who really support us, who really support us in a wholesome way, really noticing how valuable, how absolutely central to this practice being with people who support us is. And how absolutely central this quality of friendship, of befriending, is to this practice. That what we cultivate internally is a sense of caring and kindness and respect and love for each and every being, regardless of their anything. Befriending the hawk and the baby bird at the same time. Befriending the integrity of the bok choy plant and the deliciousness of the individual leaves when they become lunch. Befriending the people in your lives and being befriended, being loved. The Buddha says one cultivates the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. There is no more foundational teaching and practice than mindfulness. If you don't know what is occurring as it's occurring, you can't make choices about whether to stay with it, leave it, go deeper, rest in appreciation. Every choice you make is so more accurate if you know what's occurring, if you're mindful. Otherwise, all your choices are run by habits. You're surrendering all of your agency, your very life, to habits. Which, is pretty much what everyone does. So, it's not the end of the world, we say. But it's not the world we want to live in. We want to live in a world where we have agency, where we're making choices. And in order to make those choices, and to make choices that are really wholesome and skillful and filled with love and compassion, mindfulness has to be present. You have to establish a practice of mindfulness so that when things occur, you know they're occurring. And when a habit shows up that wants to take over and just make all the decisions about what happens next, you actually are mindful of the arising of that habit. And you actually have a choice to say, sure, that's fine, or no, that's not what I want to do. When mindfulness is accompanied by befriending, there's no battle. You see the habit arise. You want to make a choice of whether to go along with what the habit wants to do or whether to make a different choice. And you do so by befriending the habit. Thich Nhat Hanh uses the phrase, "Oh, hello, my little habit energy." It's a form of befriending. It's a form of caring, of recognizing that the habit has its purpose. And the mindfulness is for you to be able to see whether the habit's purpose aligns with what you want. If it doesn't align with what you want, well, don't go there. You know, don't be entangled with the habit. Let go. Let the habit go do what it wants to do, but you're not going to have your actions be driven by that habit. You're going to choose for yourself what happens next. This is the detachment that the Buddha is talking about. When accompanied by loving kindness, the Buddha says, there can arise detachment. Oh, hello, my little habit energy. I see you, but you are not me. That's detachment. And the habit energy comes loaded usually with some form of, I'll just call it emotional content. And so the Buddha says, with loving kindness, by befriending the habit, you can experience dispassion, meaning that the passion of the habit doesn't become your passion. You can have some space around it. You can see, oh, hello, little habit. Boy, are you all juiced up. You're ready to go. How sweet. But no, thank you. I am not getting entangled with your passion. I'm staying free and choosing what I want. What's in alignment with what I want to see happen in my life. And then the Buddha uses the phrase, all of this leading to the maturity of surrender. What a beautiful phrase, the maturity of surrender. You know, the image of a child, both in a beautiful way and in a troubling way, is that that oneness with passion, the excitement. You know, they get down by the beach and they're excited about the sand and they're excited about the water and they're excited about the waves and the seagulls and everything is passion. And sometimes that passion leads to a great deal of fun, and sometimes it leads to something that's problematic. And there's very little mindfulness. There's just reactivity, just response. Some of it delightful, some of it troubling. Maturity, in this case, is connected with mindfulness. Maturity, in this case, is connected to letting go and to non-entanglement. And to persistence of virtue. You choose what is virtuous. You choose what is virtuous. And your actions then need to be chosen in order to be in alignment with your own virtue. Not something imposed, not something forced, but what truly occurs, where your body really knows, this is virtuous, this leads to freedom, this is what I want my actions to be in alignment with. And when habits arise that are not in alignment with my own choosing, my own virtue, with mindfulness I see them, with love I befriend them, these habits. But I have maturity and I surrender the habit back to the world. I do not engulf it. I do not get entangled with it. I do not, most importantly, see it as me. It's not mine to figure out. It's not mine to fix. It is my work to disentangle and let go. And I do so only with love. So let's practice this letting go, this being in alignment with our own values. Let's develop mindfulness.